This is Mark Glicini, and you're listening to Pro Lacrosse Talk.
On Schreiber.
Sidearm win, scores!
Now it's front. Fidel scores! Hands off for Rabel, switches hands and scores!
Carly O'Miller showing off those shifty skills.
Right off the bat, there's Lyle Thompson.
Finds a wide open Danowski, and Glicini blocked it with his bat!
Welcome to Season 2 of the Pro Lacrosse Talk podcast, the voice of Pro Lacrosse. I'm Hutton, he's Adam, and together we're bringing you interviews from all your favorite players and coaches, as well as news and analysis from all 4 professional lacrosse leagues. We're here with Mark Glicini, Yale graduate and current member of the NLL San Diego Seals and PLL Chaos. Mark, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start a little bit with the beginning of your career. You grew up in North Jersey. You went to Mahwah High School. You helped build that program, including winning multiple league championships and being named North Jersey Player of the Year. Talk a little bit about picking up the stick for the first time.
Sure, and I think I started the game a little bit later, especially compared to my Maryland and Long Island friends. I didn't pick up the game until 5th grade. I came actually over from a baseball practice, and it was Mahwah Lacrosse Family Night. A man that I'll speak about when I speak of Mahwah Lacrosse is a guy named Brian Callanan. He's the first person that put me on the field, gave me a lacrosse stick. He was my first guest on my podcast because of his influence in lacrosse and teaching me the game right away. But 5th grade is when it started for me. I actually started off as an ex-attackman, which brings me back to those days. But I had played every sport under the sun. I was primarily a baseball player at the time, and I picked up lacrosse. But I remember the day that I quit baseball was when I was finding myself in center field, reaching in the back of my pocket for more sunflower seeds. And I think just the pace of the game is what brought me away from baseball and closer to lacrosse. I played ex-attackman all throughout 5th grade, 6th grade, all the way up to the end of middle school. I played it throughout my high school career. When I joined Mahwah High School, it was because of Brian Callanan. When I was an 8th grader, he started the program at Mahwah High School, the public high school there. He had already started Suffern, which was right across the border, across the town in New York. And I was choosing between the parochial schools around us, the St. Joe's, Bergen Catholic, and Don Bosco. And I chose to go to Mahwah High School because of him. And my freshman year, we didn't even have a varsity program. We played JV as a freshmen and sophomores. And then my sophomore year, we had our first year varsity program. And due to his way of discipline, and he was an ex-Marine, so he actually pushed for conditioning. I think that is something that you'll find as a through line throughout my entire life, is the conditioning that he instilled in me as a 5th grader. And then my junior year is when I won North Jersey Player of the Year, and we won the Bergen County Championship over Bergen Catholic in the finals, and Ridgewood, who's another powerhouse public school. So it was quite the journey, and it's had a big impact on me all throughout my career as a lacrosse player, because it's much different than many others that play lacrosse today.
You know, absolutely. And I actually, right now I'm in Brick, New Jersey, but I was living in Weehawken. So very familiar with that area in the past year or two. So it's very interesting to hear, too, about its growth, of the game in just the past 5 or 6 years, as you said.
Absolutely.
And I listened to your podcast with Coach Callanan, and I think he could make anyone want to run through a brick wall, right? But I was a goalie, so I kind of – I got paused by that just because I didn't want a cone to be thrown in cage instead of me, right?
You like that? I couldn't believe that story. I've never heard of it before, but It doesn't surprise me in the least in the way he carries himself.
Yeah.
Great man.
Yeah, that's awesome. So kind of transition into the college side after your Deerfield. You did decide to stay in the New England area and head to Yale and play for Coach Shay. Talk about what went into that decision and to head to New Haven and your experience as a Bulldog.
Yeah, it was actually one of those moments where I talk about this with my mental clients and my teams. There's moments in life where you have to bet on yourself, and I wouldn't be doing the story justice if I was talking about it by starting at Yale. I would have to go back to my junior year, in which I was still very under-recruited. I think that's something that is omnipotent among a lot of high school athletes because of the saturated market of recruiting. And at the end of my junior year, I started going out 2.5 hours out to practice to play for the Long Island Sting because they had more exposure. They were among there with the Expresses and the Crabs and all these different powerhouse programs where I started to get the exposure for the first time. So long story short, when I was finished my junior year as North Jersey Player of the Year, I was offered by Williams to play football and lacrosse. And that was really tough for me to turn down. And I don't know why I necessarily did, other than I wanted to play lacrosse at the highest level. I still speak to Coach McCormick, who's the coach at Williams, very great man. And that was really heavy on my heart to turn that down because I think I could have done great things there. But I just wanted to play lacrosse at the highest level. And I decided to turn down that offer because I wanted to bet on myself and I wanted to play at the highest level. And when I declared postgraduate year, I went into the fall of my senior year uncommitted anywhere. And I took a few different tournaments after sending out that email that I was going postgraduate. One of the things that I would say to everybody that's trying to get recruited in high school is it's very much like sales, and you can't get discouraged in the fact that your email is not getting responded to. So I remember sending out I was declaring that I was going postgraduate. I didn't know where I was going yet. Within 3 or 4 weeks and 2 or 3 tournaments had been offered by Yale, Harvard, and Georgetown. So it just was one of those times where I did bet on myself. I ended up committing to Andy Shay at Yale because he was the first one to bet on me. And then the rest is history. It was between me and Michael Quinn, another All-American, one of the best defenders that I've ever played with. He went to Hotchkiss and I went to Deerfield. Coach Shay had us pick a postgraduate school that we'd like to go to. And I heard about Chip Davis and the powerhouse program at Deerfield Academy. So I was excited to go play under him or nowhere else. So then I went there and became a two-way midfielder. He had me on the wing, running first line O midi and then first line D midi. And that's where I kind of developed even more. Throughout my high school career, I went from 168 pounds as a sophomore, really started hitting the weight room going into my junior year before my breakout year. And I came into that season 191 pounds. And then my PG year really set me up for my 4 years at Yale. And the fact that at one point I got up to 213 or 215, right? And I was coming in as a much more of a thoroughbred horse that can go up and down the field rather than that slick ex-attackman. And it really feeds into the whole story of me looking for ways to win rather than caring about what role I was going to play. And Chip Davis put that into me. He inspired me to be an all-around complete lacrosse player. And then when I showed up at Yale, to get to answer your question, is we had a lot of seniors that were going to be taking the offensive midfielder role, and we were set at attack. And when Coach Andy Shay said I could play right away if I wanted to play transition midi or D midi, I jumped at the chance, right? Because I knew my athleticism could help the team win, and I wanted to be on the field, and the rest is history from there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And, I think you put it aptly that you just wanted to win. You weren't too concerned about your role. Whatever your role was, winning was important to you. You had a great career at Yale. Talk a little bit more about that and how your, game kind of progressed from your freshman year to your senior year.
Sure, and I think it's right in line with the Yale lacrosse program. It was something that we had been really fortunate to have while I was at Yale was the sports science behind Thomas Newman. That really changed the tide in the way that we were looked at as more as Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and we were caring about what we put into our body and how we worked out. And it was very customizable and it was less primitive. It was more nuanced, and we were focusing on power output and pro agility time and really caring to the individual that's on the team. So I think my first 2 years at Yale before Thomas Newman came in, we were a very gritty group. I wouldn't even say we were too lacrosse savvy. We were just very gritty. There was a culture already instilled. They had won an Ivy League title before I got there while I was at Deerfield, and it was just a bunch of tough dudes. And that's what Andy Shay has always made us, is accountable, willing to put in an extra effort in the classroom and on the field. And it's kind of how a Yale lacrosse player is today. Kind of how they do anything is how they do everything. And so we went from that gritty culture and then mixed it in with sports science. And then now we're getting a lot of different talent, or at least Andy Shay is able to pull from different areas and everybody wants to go to Yale. But that wasn't always the case, especially before I got got to Yale. And even in my first couple of years at Yale, it was just we didn't have the Ben Reeses of the world, right? We were very tough. We were very strong-minded, and then having that sports science and then the recruitment of talent really has taken Yale to the next level. And I fall right in line with that trajectory, and the fact that I came in very athletic, as I talked about. I was really sound physically. That probably came from my senior year while I was at Mawa High School. I actually became a player coach because I had a stress fracture in my L2 and L4. So I was expecting to come in my senior year and have a better year, and I was on pace to do it. Already setting the point record in the state of New Jersey as a junior. I was on pace to even beat that as a senior. And then everything fell apart from my back, and then my mom got sick with lymphoma. So that kind of has led me to do what I'm doing today, is teaching the physical game, the mental game, because of when I lost it. And I really feel for those athletes right now that don't have the sport, because I remember being a senior and losing the back half of my career. A lot of tears there, a lot of questioning, why me, and who am I if I'm not a high caliber athlete. So I had an identity crisis, but I decided to turn to visualization and imagination. And that's where kind of the first taste of the mental game and callousing not just my hands in the weight room, but callousing my mind. And I took that mentality with me to Deerfield. And then I took that mentality with me at Yale to hopefully lead other people. One of the guys that I really love his work ethic and saw him grow as a junior, as a freshman when I was a junior, is Ty Warner. Right. And I remember having a conversation that if you continue on your trajectory, you'll be a first-team All-American. And he graduated in 2018, not only as a first-team All-American, but as a national champion. And I think life is all about the trajectory. We get a little bit too caught up in the location of where we're at and not too focused on the brick and mortar, chop wood, carry water every single day and work your way up. And that explains my Yale career to a T.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating too that you talk about, you barely touched on the lacrosse aspect a little bit. You were talking about, the strength and conditioning, sports exercise science, the mental side of it. I think all those, often get lost when we're talking about what makes a team great and what makes athletes able to perform at such a high level. So it's really cool to hear, kind of your thought process on that and your thoughts on all the things that go into how you can perform at a high level that aren't lacrosse related. So I think that's very, very interesting.
I'd also say the game has changed, and that is such a great point that you make, in that I think years and years ago, you didn't need to be necessarily a football looking type athlete to succeed at the Division I level. But I think that's changed. Like, if you're not doing strength and conditioning, if you're not worrying about the mental game, then you're going to lose more often than not, just because everybody has that high competitive fire and they're mixing it with that mental game along with strength and conditioning. So I think it's more pertinent now than it was decades ago.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this quote I love. JJ Redick said, you've never arrived, you're always becoming. And that kind of along the same lines of that trajectory is what I was thinking of when you were chatting about that a little bit there. You really kept that mentality, obviously, when you went to the pros as well, and that you were a 4th round pick by the Bay Hawks, spent 3 seasons with them. How were you able to really mold your game and adapt to the pro game for your success?
Great question. And I think it stems to little victories. I was having a conversation with Brody Merrill, somebody I've become very close to, not only as one of my mentors, but a friend inside the game, a really close friend. And we have these conversations often about little victories. And I think I was focusing on them in high school. I remember my high school coach saying I could smile a little bit more, but I was just focused. And I think that's at that level, at the high school level, if you have a high amount of focus and undying competitive fire, you can win games at the high school level. And then once you get to the collegiate level, there's separating factors, because everybody has that kind of competitive fire, right, as you're getting closer to the pro level. I remember sitting down with Coach Baxter, who's now the head coach at Fairfield. I had the privilege of having him as my defensive coordinator for 4 years. He started at Yale when I started at Yale, and it was pulling teeth for me to get me to watch film as a freshman, right? I was playing D-Midi for us, and we had 4-year starters at Pull, And I was this young gun who was athletic, but I didn't develop this until later on. I'm pointing to my head here if this is just a podcast, but I didn't develop between the ears until my junior and senior year. I had Brian Kane as my first mental coach, who inspired me to go find my now mentor, Dr. Rob Gilbert, who I now teach and preach the mental game with. I was his student, a graduate student of applied sports psychology, and now I teach it with him. So I guess in answering this question, I would have to say those little victories, and they're not just found in the weight room when everybody else is working out. They're not just found in winning the scrimmages when coach says that we're going to play a 1-goal game. They're found in the extra mobility that you do throughout the week. They're found in studying the game, not just yourself, but the opponent. And when Coach Baxter started teaching that to me, preaching it to me, I hated it. I hated watching film so much, and now I'm the biggest advocate. I would argue that nobody watches more film than me at the pro level, and the fact that as a D-midi, I've understood that it's not my job to stop the opponent from scoring, but to deter him from taking the shot that he wants to and give my goalie the best chance to make a save. So I would say it's less about the overarching wins that everybody knows about, and it's about finding those little victories inside your day, inside the film, inside the mobility and the stuff that maybe the majority of the fish are not paying attention to. And I think that's what makes a shark, is those little victories throughout the day and week.
No, that's an interesting mindset. I really like that. And, you know, you made the jump then to the PLL following your MLL career with the Bayhawks. Joined the Chaos with Coach Towers. You've been known to jump in front of a lot of shots, which is kind of your MO now. But talk a little bit about, you know, joining this Chaos squad, joining Coach Towers. You know, how has his leadership helped you guys take that next step, and what are you looking forward to the most, I guess, in this championship series coming up?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to answer that in 2 parts, because the jumping in front of the shots is obviously something that I get asked a lot. Takes me back to the commitment that I had to myself in my Yale career. I remember having a conversation with Coach Andrew Baxter and saying, we're done watching ourselves in film. Is there anything that you want to watch? And I remember saying to Coach Baxter, hey, there's this guy, Danny Burns, and he's playing for Team USA against Team Canada. I've been watching his film a little bit. And we watched it that day at practice. And then fast forward, I get drafted by the Bayhawks. And on game number 1, the D-middies that are playing that day is Danny Burns and Mark Glicini. I tapped him on the chest. I was like, dude, you don't realize how long I've been waiting for this moment. And he said probably something along, get ready, rookie, get ready to play, you know, because it wasn't as big for him as it was for me. But kind of having that commitment, and I mean commitment on a deep level, not just wanting to show up and play wall ball or anything like that. I mean, like, actually thinking about it, losing sleep over it, having somatic responses of sweating in the hands. And that has carried me throughout my pro career with the Bayhawks and now at the Chaos, where there's this platform on NBC and the talent is so high, the speed of the game is so fast. And it's like, if you are not ready to keep up, the train is not going to stop for you. So I'm looking to grow every single time and every single day and every single year. I was very upset with the way that things ended last year. I was texting Coach Towers that I watched the Redwoods lost last year in the playoffs, and my blood was boiling, and we were looking at different things that might need to be fixed going into this year. And I really think it stems back to chemistry and the culture, right? And that's something that's contagious at the collegiate level and at the pro level, that if you can have the chemistry and the culture right, you're going to win 1-goal games, close games, and high pressure situations. So to answer your question, what I'm most excited about is to carry my individual commitment and craft, along with my great teammates and players, a culture that's undying, right? And that will carry us not just in the beginning of this championship series, but will allow us a chance to win the crown at the end.
Yeah, we're excited for it. You know, you're gonna have to hit the ground running with only being 16 days, but we're definitely excited for it.
For sure.
Yeah, and you kind of going off that individual commitment, that was definitely honored and culminated in you winning the inaugural Jimmy Regan Teammate of the Year award. Obviously, there were a million reasons why you won that award, but talk about what it meant to be the first recipient of that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I would say it's that is the best award I've ever received. I talk about it with my family a lot, just because in my acceptance speech I talked about it. But my mom's late brother, who died of testicular cancer, was 26. He was an Army Ranger as well. And it was crazy and fitting that I had won that and was able to give testimony to him, who I kind of dedicated the 26th year of my life to, because there's comparisons that are made among my aunts and when I'm having conversations about my mom's brother, Johnny. And I look back at winning that and devoting it to somebody else, and it just sheds light on the importance of setting goals with others in mind. That's a reoccurring theme in my life. And I think if you have that higher purpose, whether it be for an individual that you're doing it for, a team, or a movement, you'll go further, right? And I've said that many times, but the two things I would say about it is such a high honor to receive, but I also want to point out that I don't feel like I just won it alone. I think there's also many amazing people that voted for me to have that, and I was able to do it because of the faith family that I have, and because of Johnny, my mom's late brother.
Yeah, no, I love that, what you said, setting a goal with others in mind. I think that's, sums up, why you won that teammate award and sums up what a true teammate is. So I really like that quote. But going off of that, too, we want to touch on your NLL experience a little bit. You made the San Diego Seals this year. Unfortunately, your season was impacted by COVID-19. But talk a little bit about going out to San Diego and making that squad. You got to play again with Brody Merrill, who's your teammate on the Chaos. He's on the Water Dogs now. But talk a little bit about playing the box game.
Sure. And just goes back to me doing it for a higher purpose. I knew that Joe Tsai, a Yale lacrosse grad, was the owner of that team, and I wanted to keep the Yale bloodline alive. That's why I went out there in the first place. And I stayed for other reasons. I think Patty Merrill is one of the best motivators in the world, our head coach and GM. We have a great assistant staff in Shooter and Billy Greer. And I think the culture is another thing that comes up in terms of the NLL. I think American players don't really know what it's like on the inside there, and I think it's a privilege to be on the inside of the NLL, because I went out and tried out for the San Diego Seals and made it to the final cuts 2 years ago, and that struck a fire with me, right, to come back the next year and really go after it. And I was humbled to make the team. I'm looking for a role. The game is much different, right? The bounce off the boards is different. The pace of the game is different. And the two-man game is different. You're always receiving a cross-check at some point or another during the 30-second shift. So it's been awesome. I think the number one takeaway is the relationships that I've made, not just with Brody, but with other guys on the team. I was living out there with Nick Damude, who is one of our goalies, and the relationships that I've formulated on that team, I stay in touch with the guys to this day. It's awesome to not only be a part of the PLL, but to get to experience. It's a different game, and it's a different group of people, just as awesome. But I really see it as a privilege to be a part of both leagues and have an impact on both teams.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, let's get to some of your off-the-field stuff. I feel like this conversation has already talked about the peak performance side of things, right, and the fitness side. But talk about your work off the field as a personal trainer and a peak performance coach.
Yeah, awesome. I think it is a through line, and every single time, I don't think I can get into a conversation without hitting that peak performance, right? My mentor, Dr. Gilbert, who I brought up briefly, we call ourselves soldiers in a war against average, right? And it's about bringing people from a state of above average to places that they've never been. And if you went along the spectrum, this month right now in May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and there is a side of it of depression and getting back to normalcy, and that's very an angle of therapy and psychiatric view of looking at things. And the mental game in which I teach as a mental coach is more of the applied psychology. So my first taste, like I said, was from the loss that I had at an 18-year-old. It was a tough year for me. I had a career-ending concussion in football in the fall of my senior year. I broke my nose in basketball, a deviated septum, and then I went into lacrosse season, like I said, having high hopes, and I lost that season because of a fractured spine, and then my mom gets sick. So as a very young individual, I look at it as a blessing now, but there was a lot of pain there, right? And it forced me to look at myself not only physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and mentally as well. So through that loss, I started to care about my mental health. I started journaling a lot down, negative energy, writing poetry, short stories, and setting a goal or an aim. As human beings, we're so derived by having an aim rather than achievement in and of itself. So I started writing things down, like playing lacrosse at the highest level. And when I got to meet Coach Brian Kane as a junior, I still remember overthinking. I called him, we were at Brown, in the hotel getting ready for an Ivy League championship game. And I called him, I said, I can't think. I'm thinking about every single thing. And if you write down the word nowhere and put a line in between the W and the H, you go from nowhere to now here. And that's what Brian Kane helped me do. I was thinking about anything and everything, overanalyzing, having paralysis by analysis, and he allowed me to get focused and present. So that was my first taste. And when I graduated Yale with an economics degree, I went to Manhattan, was living in Manhattan for 2 years, working down on Water Street, brokering renewable energy, and working long days and working out before and after, traveling on the road for pro lacrosse. I felt like I was burning the candle on both ends. And I started losing sleep. I started waking up in tears because I knew that what I'm doing now wasn't just a job or a career, it was a calling. So I reached out to Brian Kane. He said, oh, you got to go meet Dr. Rob Gilbert. So I showed up at his door and I stayed early, went to his class for no credit, stayed late, was just trying to pick his ear about every single thing about applied psychology that I could use as a pro athlete, but also on the clientele that I was building. And now in 2018, 2 years ago, I started Mark Glicini Peak Performance, which is based on 3 pillars: lacrosse training for the high school and college athlete that's looking to take their game to the next level. I'm a certified fitness trainer and nutritionist, so I do that from the health and wellness front. And then what I'm most obsessive about is the mental game. So those 3 pillars are what I've started Mark Glicini Peak Performance. And there's different ways. There's a big splash coming at the end of this year to show people on the outside world what I'll be doing and what it's all about. But I've already given people a little bit of that a taste in the podcast that I started several months ago.
No, that's great, and that kind of segues into my next question too. Let's talk a little bit about Grateful and Full of Greatness, starting that podcast, and then getting to talk to people kind of about what you talked about with the peak performance. Tell us a little bit about what convinced you to start that.
Awesome. I would say one of my favorite quotes, and I'll actually bring up 2 here, is it's the start that stops most people. I mean, that is the hardest thing, is taking that risk to bet on yourself and choose an endeavor, whether it's a micro level in the fact that you need to get a workout done today, or step away from the microscope and look at the telescope and what you want to do down the road. I think that it really requires you to get started in some capacity. And I was really nervous. I didn't know anything about podcasting. I knew nothing, but I remember being asleep on a plane traveling to San Diego, and I woke up, and on one of the pamphlets a couple aisles down in the chair in front of me, it said grateful. And I had this aha moment that maybe I'm going to call this thing Grateful and Full of Greatness. And it stuck, because I think there's 2 sides to the coin. It's one thing to use all the desire and curiosity for personal excellence, like chasing greatness. But I think there's a lot to be said about giving back and being grateful for those who have nourished you like a flower or a solid tree and watered you and gave you sunlight to grow. And I think I do that a lot. I reach out to a lot of people. I write letters. I let them know on a daily basis I'd be nothing if it wasn't for you. Even my closest friends from Mawa, I'm not the same person unless it was for those individuals that influenced me, for the good and the bad. So I started this podcast, and I knew that there was individuals. I knew that I would do it bi-weekly because I couldn't, like you guys, get as many followers to start. But I was really obsessive about getting the message out there by simple conversation about the importance of the pursuit, right? And that's how I start the whole conversation is I chose this guest because they live with the pursuit of greatness in mind. And it's not just what you do from a training perspective or when the lights are on in between the lines, whatever your craft might be, but it's usually how you carry yourself all the time. And I'm really going out of my way to find those clients, those guests that can be on there that really do everything the right way. They have a mission. They surround themselves with positive people in an environment, and then they have the daily discipline to carry themselves not just for days and months, but for years. A lot of my guests, like the Brody Merrills of the world, like the Ben Ives, like Coach Callahan, my first coach, and my most recent Coach Davis, they've been doing great things for decades, right? So I think there's something to be said from that simple conversation, getting the message out there about peak performance, which is a way of life more than anything else.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you talk about bringing those guests on because of that peak performance and that pursuit of greatness. You usually end by asking how they define greatness. So I'm going to throw it back at you, and I'm always curious.
Oh, wow. Putting it right back on me. I think it stems along the lines of what you said with J.J. Redick's quote, not arriving but always becoming. That would have to be in line with one of my answers. And I think if you ask me tomorrow, it might be a little bit different wording or different diction. But I always say to my clients and my teams that having an expected end leads to average work. So if that's third quarter turning into fourth quarter and you look up at the scoreboard, oh no, we're up 2, why can't the game just end right now? You might lose that game, right? You might lose that game because the probability of the outcome you want increases when you let go of the need to have it. So what it's all about to me is never arriving. Something I do with my athletes is extra reps, extra sets, and if we're out on the field, I'll act like we're going into the third overtime in one of the reps that I'm doing, because if you think that the ending is coming, it's going to lead to average work. And greatness is about, yes, the mundane, the unsexy, boring lifestyle of doing repetition and living a lifestyle of always hydrating, getting enough sleep, and doing the things that everybody knows to do, but not everybody does. And that's really the separating factor. Everybody knows what to do at some degree, but not everybody does what they know. So the answer to my definition of greatness would be never arriving. It would be never think that the end of your book is coming, turn the page and keep writing, because that, if you're able to do that and live your life that way, that is contagious. That's greatness. And it makes others people want to be great too.
That's awesome. I feel like we have so many life lessons in this first half of the episode. It's been great. No, I love it. That kind of wraps up our main questions, though. We're going to take a quick break. We'll hear a word from our sponsors, and then we're going to go into our 5 and 5 and have a little bit of fun, too, with the lacrosse and off-the-field stuff. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Pro Lacrosse Talk podcast. Today I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Anchor. We've been using Anchor for the Pro Lacrosse Talk podcast since the very start. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place, and better yet, it's free. They allow you to easily record and edit your podcast, and once it's published, they send it out to all the major networks such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and many more. They also connect you with advertisers so you can start making money from your podcast right away. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast today, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Today I also want to talk to you about Phoenix Supplements. I started using Phoenix Supplements after searching for a supplement brand that didn't use any unnecessary additives. Phoenix's line of supplements use only the required ingredients and is free of any fillers that many supplement companies use. Not only that, but their supplements are produced here in the US in an FDA-regulated facility. And the best part is they taste really good. I personally like using the Orange Dreamsicle protein blend in the morning, and I use their chocolate whey following workouts. So if you're interested in trying Phoenix Supplements, visit their website, fnxfit.com, and use the code PROLACROSSE to receive 15% off your order today. All right, so welcome back. Let's dive into our 5 and 5 segment. So I'll start with the lacrosse ones. And my first one is, do you have any pregame routines or superstitions?
Oh, wow. I liked hearing this from Kobe Bryant, and that he does what he needs to do before a game. I think everybody's very superstitious at the high level and making sure that everything is particular. But I really like doing things along the same line as that. Is I know what I kind of need. I know if I need to get energized a little bit more or if I need to cool down. So I would say I would listen to more energetic music if I need to. I'm not always putting the headphones in, but if I feel too relaxed, I'll do something. I'll get moving a little bit more, do some extra sprints to get the blood flowing. But if I feel like I'm already there in terms of ready to run through a brick wall, then I'll focus on my breathing a little bit more. But I pay attention to where I'm at from a number perspective in terms of arousal.
No, I like that. It's not necessarily, doing the same thing every time, but recognizing your own physical and mental cues and how to meet those. I like that. Number two, what is top song on your game day playlist? If you are getting jacked up.
Oh wow. Like I said, I'm probably different here than most people. If I need to calm down, some of the people that I listen to is Dave Matthews Band, Ben Howard, and Ziggy Alberts. Those guys take me to a place where it's a little bit more calm. One of the quotes that I've come across with is "calm is contagious," and I've always listened to Eminem for a long time. I feel like his hard times I could speak with, and there's no better in the world in terms of rap and hip hop than Eminem. So if I need to get going, I turn him on.
Yeah, no, Eminem is a staple for me as well, and I'm sure for Adam. Number three, who was a lacrosse player that you looked up to when you were younger and kind of tried to emulate?
Sure. I would say as an offensive player, it was Paul Rabel. I looked up to him in terms of his triple split, taking guys off the top, not just doing a regular bull dodge or a single split, but kind of the shake bob of the head, triple split, get down the alley and find a corner. There's a reason he's the owner of the league and started this, is because he's been doing it for such a long time. But in terms of offensive prowess, I would definitely say him. And it's changed along the years as my transition from offense to defense has changed, right? So I'm 19 years old by the time I'm focusing fully on defense. And then some of those guys are Matt Abbott. Right, when I was a rookie on the Bayhawks, he had been doing it for close to a decade. So you best believe I was sitting right next to him in his locker. I wanted to do everything with him, and I knew that he was the best two-way midfielder, and I wanted to be. And what the mental game's all about is success leaves clues. So I would say I would have to give testimony to Danny Burns, like I talked about in my Yale career, but then Matt Abbott right when I got into the career, because success leaves clues. And I wanted to do exactly what Matt Abbott does, because he not only did it, but he stayed. It's really, really harder to stay than become, I would say. So that's something that's stuck with me. And nowadays it's Brody Merrill, because no one's done it at a high level on the defensive end.
Yeah, no, success leaves clues. I love that. That's so many great quotes from this so far. Number four, where's your current lacrosse stick set up in terms of shaft, head, and stringing? What are you rocking these days?
Sure. It's funny. I actually just had to post a picture about senior day back when I was at Mawa High School, because the PLL is teaming up in Chipotle for that, to give honor to those seniors who had lost their senior day. And I had the STX set up all the way back then, and then I was string king for a very long time. And then now I'm back to STX. I use the Alliance and the Stallion head. With ECD mess, actually, the Hero mess is great that I use. So I string my own sticks, which is something that's different, I would say. But that's my setup right now.
It's awesome. No, I was never good at stringing. I always enjoyed doing it when I could. It just, I just don't think I ever did it as well as some of the guys on the team that strung my sticks. But I like the challenge, though. That's the unique thing about lacrosse, too, is that you have the ability to be creative with your stick and, which shooting strings you're using. And,
that's what I would say I am superstitious about. Like, I messed up for so many years and trying to string it, but now I have it the way I actually use Brendan Mundorf. The way he strung his sidewall, when I was a rookie, there's another success leaves clues. I saw a future Hall of Famer and what he was doing, and I've used it the same thing ever since.
That's great. And following off of that a little bit, do you use the same stuff for NLL? Is your stick setup about the same, or is it a little bit different?
Yeah, I think you're not allowed to use the same sponsors. So I was using Warrior indoor. I used a regular Evo, Warrior head, and I think there's only 2 or 3 that you could use, whether it was Epic, Under Armour, or Warrior, and I went ahead with the Warrior Evo.
Gotcha. And then the final one for the lacrosse is, what has been your favorite venue to play lacrosse at? You guys went on the tour last year and went to a lot of great sites, but it could be from college as well.
Oh, well, things that come to mind when you first say that are long trips up to Cornell. I didn't beat Cornell until my senior year in college, which is interesting because I won 3 out of 4 Ivy championships. The Princeton luckily took them out my freshman year in the semifinals of the Ivies. But I just remember, I know you're looking for a positive answer, but I remember going up to Cornell, and that was a long drive and a long drive back. For 3 years there because we never beat them. And this following tour last year was very exciting. One of the things that comes to mind was Chicago. We played in the rain. It was perhaps Chaos's sloppiest game, and we found a way to win in overtime on a dunk from Jake Ficarro to Josh Byrne on the inside. I remember it was kind of an interesting story because I not only get in the way of Kyle Harrison's step down to put it into overtime, but it's raining. I have to fly to a wedding in Philadelphia that has already started. And for a split second, I remember saying to myself, wow, I'm going to miss this wedding, but then I have to lock back in. So there's the mental game, be where your feet are. And I remember like, oh, there's lightning. Is my flight going to get delayed? And then I found a way to lock it in. I have one of the craziest clips of me going absolutely bananas after that win in Chicago, because I don't think we necessarily deserve to win, but that's sport, right? And finding a way to win no matter what. And it was a sloppy game, and I'll always remember that because maybe we didn't deserve to win, but we did enough to win.
Yeah, no, I like that. And there were so many great overtime finishes last season. I think that's a testament not only to the PLL and the talent, but also just the sport in general. I mean, I tell people we did another podcast with somebody from the UK who was looking to learn more about lacrosse. And my pitch to them was that the sport, like, no one's ever out of it. It's a game of runs. Even if a team's down by 7 or 8 goals, there's always that opportunity to come back. And I think, there's very few sports, maybe hockey's another one that's kind of like that, but there's very few sports I think that you can say that about.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That's so well said. And the fact that makes lacrosse the best sport I've ever been a part of. And I've pretty much played them all except hockey. And I love hockey for the same reason, is because of the pace of play and the game of runs. It's almost like the momentum is tangible. Like Drew Brees says, like, momentum can really change a game, and there's 3 plays that you never know when they're going to happen. But in lacrosse, you can really feel that shift in momentum, and it's really powerful.
No, absolutely.
All right, I'll take the off-the-field questions here. Number 1, what are some hobbies or activities you enjoy doing when you're not on the field?
Sure. I think it started when I was in high school, but I still do it to this day, is finding time to write throughout the day. My sister actually for Christmas gave me a 5-minute journal, which I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for, 3 things that I'm looking forward to in the day, and then positive affirmation. If I could recommend a book to somebody, it would be Life is Magic by John Dorenbos, because we have 60,000 thoughts, 80% are negative. We're 7 times more receptive to negative energy. And something that John Dorenbos talks about is talk to yourself, not listen to yourself. So doing that and writing down my goals and making them public with my friends and talking about that stuff, it becomes more of a self-fulfilling prophecy more than anything else. So that's something that I do almost every day, is write.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Magic Man. I'm an Eagles fan, so I appreciate it.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I do the journaling thing too. Tim Ferriss actually did something pretty similar where it's you're grateful for one person, so you write them a letter every day, and it really changes your mood and you obviously know about being grateful with the podcast name in and of itself, but no, that's awesome. Number 2, who is a non-lacrosse athlete that you would really think would excel on the lacrosse field?
Ooh. First, I'm a diehard Giants fan, and the numbers I've seen Saquon Barkley put up at Penn State and his explosion. I mean, I don't see being a D-Mitty. Something that I do not like is when somebody is looking to use their speed to cut me up and get down the alley one way, and I would have a hard time getting on his hands, let alone cross-checking him.
That's a great choice.
He's probably going to hopefully not tear up the Birds D-line this year, too. We'll see. It'll be a good matchup. Number 3, favorite place to go on vacation?
So grandparents on my mom's side, they have a place down the Jersey Shore, lived down in Spring Lake for 25 to 35 years. And now my cousins live down in Seagirt, down the Jersey Shore. So we go down there and we have a great time with our cousins and extended family. And also my grandparents live in Vero Beach, Florida. So they've stopped living up in the Jersey Shore and now they're down in Florida. And I think I'm very faith-filled, but very family-oriented as well. So I don't really care so much about where I am as opposed to who I'm with. So I would say down the Jersey Shore or in Florida, Vero Beach with my family.
Awesome choice. Right now I'm in Brick. I'm getting married in Spring Lake in the fall. So great choice. We're not sure where we're gonna live yet because I do work in Secaucus, but we're thinking about living near the shore somewhere, and just doing the commute because we love the beach so much. So,
well, congratulations, and I hope
you're
worked out with this quarantine.
I know, yeah. So far, so good. We still don't think we're gonna have to. We think if we do have to, maybe if there's a resurgence, we'll have it a lot smaller, and then maybe do a bigger party in a year or so. But so far, so good. So,
well, congratulations, Hutton.
Thank you.
Number 4. I'm curious what your answer to this one is about, since it's a little bit about nutrition. What's your favorite meal, and do you prefer to take out or cook at home?
Woo! Well, now I've been doing a lot of cooking at home. I'm a pretty boring when it comes to cooking at home. I really eat a lot of chicken, rice, and vegetables. It's really like a rinse and repeat in that way. It's very mundane. But if I was to choose, I'm a very big sushi eater. I really like sushi. I like probably once or twice a week an Italian meal, rigatoni bolognese or shrimp fried diablo. I'm getting into more of a spicy lifestyle as of late, as my friends will attest to. But I'm a pretty clean eater, and I think my vice, just to show that I'm just as normal as anybody else, is probably ice cream. I'd have to go with cookie dough. Ice cream is a vice of mine.
Well, I'm an ice cream fiend, so I love it.
Hutton's, that's a Jackson trait. My wife is Hutton's cousin.
Wow.
We met, and I think ice cream runs in their blood.
Yeah, for sure.
You should have a Pro Lacrosse Talk about that. There you go.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And number 5, this one I'm super curious about. I was excited to ask you. You talked a little bit about one particular book, but any other books or podcasts you would recommend to a teammate or friend or anyone for that matter?
Yeah, actually, the thing that comes to mind is kind of making sure I choose the right one here. I just finished Fearless about Adam Brown, a SEAL Team 6, a guy that passed away. He has an amazing story. Really, really loved that book. I would say The Art of Learning by Josh Wadeskins was an exceptional book about the tactical yet psychological aspect to everything that you do. The Boys in the Boat is arguably the best book I've ever read in terms of bringing the faith or spiritual aspect into it and finding a way to win Olympic gold during Nazi Germany. Yep. The thing that got me into applied psychology is Mind Gym by Gary Mack. It's a simple read if you're not a big reader. It's like 3 to 4 pages per chapter, which is exciting for the non-reader. And then if I was to talk about podcasts, the ones that I listen to most are How I Built This and Finding Mastery. I'm like I talked about doing things for family. I like finding specific guests as well, or great companies. I'm reading the book right over there, That Will Never Work, about the CEO, Mark Rudolph of Netflix, right? So I'm a big, like I talked about, it's really one of my successes that I could give away, or clues that I could give away, is that success leaves clues. So even if I'm watching a video or listening to an audio book, or if you want to make simple changes into your life, and I'm sorry for a long-winded answer here, but it would be Own the Day, Own Your Life by Aubrey Marcus. It gives you optimizing strategies for every part of your day and specific parts of your week.
Yeah, his podcast is awesome. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy his podcast too. Boys in the Boat, man, that was one that really hit home for me too. That just shows you where all those different guys came from, and the fact that you don't have an excuse, right? If you want to do something, you're going to do it, right? So the backgrounds, like overcoming those obstacles, were massive. So I think about that when I'm working out too,
and it has a great mix of individual commitment. I mean, the main character's story is absurd, and there's so many times where he has to choose individual commitment over his feelings, which I'm sure he felt terrible. And then it brings the team aspect into it. 9 people in a boat with different personalities, all rowing for the same cause. So you kind of, whether you're a coach, a parent, whether you're, I don't know, just a human being with a heart, you're going to absolutely love that book.
Yeah, no, and Mind Gym has been suggested to us multiple times as well. Ben Rubior just suggested it to us, and Micah Kersey as well, the Halifax Thunderbirds head coach. So that's one I think I need to pick up. I'm not the biggest reader as Adam is. I enjoy those type of books, though, and something just a little bit to get me going each day. But that wraps up our 5 and 5. Final question we like to ask all our guests is, what is some advice you have for a young player looking to play lacrosse professionally?
You know, I would say don't give up too soon. You know, I think there can be this influx of information that says you should quit the sport, and something that we're doing wrong here in America is teaching kids the same way that we teach adults. And I think that's forcing kids to lose their love for the sport, and their passion fades a little too early. I always say to everybody that the most powerful thing in the world is momentum. And the reason that is because you're not staying the same. And if you're willing to make little positive changes in your life, right, the easiest way to improve your life is to improve your inner circle. Your environment definitely matters. So do everything to protect your energy, right, and make sure that your energy is worth catching than avoiding. And it circles all the way back to, once your energy remains high and you're willing to follow those daily disciplines that lead to a very momentous endeavor, just don't quit too early, right? And really stick with it, even when there's a lot of adversity in your face, because the same thing that blows out a candle extends a wildfire, right? So if I say a bad thing to you, that you're not good enough, or I say a good thing, it all should build the narrative in your head to use that as fuel to extend the wildfire rather than blow you out like a candle.
Wow, that's great. I another interesting way to look at it too. I think too what you hit on with, training these kids as kids and not just as adults too, I think is important. You know, especially now these days, you see a lot of burnout in young athletes. So, I think that's some great advice. Well, Mark, this has been awesome. We really appreciate you coming on. Had a blast talking to you, and we're really looking forward to watching the chaos in this championship series.
Oh, awesome.
Today, I also want to talk to you about Design Tree. On our Design Tree store, we have several t-shirt designs like the Pro Lacrosse Talk tee I'm wearing today, our Blast Lacrosse shirt, Lacrosse is Medicine shirt, and many more designs on the way. Design Tree is also home to hundreds of other t-shirt designs in the realm of sports and pop culture. To help support the podcast, please consider checking out our Design Tree store at dsgntree.com/pro-lacrosse-talk and grab a shirt today.